everyone. This is Dee Marley with the History Bards podcast. Today we have the great privilege of introducing Libby McNamee to the show today, and we are thrilled to have her because the topics of her books are very intriguing and very timely, and as far as what historical fiction authors are looking for. So we're really excited for her to tell us about the books today. So I want to tell our listeners a little bit about Libby. Her bio says that she's an author, a public speaker, and a lawyer, and loves exploring America's many historical sites. She's a Boston native and graduated from Georgetown University cum laude and Catholic University Law School. Libby served as a U.S. Army JAG officer in Korea, Bosnia, Germany, and Washington State. Wow, that's amazing. She and her book-obsessed husband and son live in Richmond, Virginia. So, Libby, can you tell us a little bit more about you and your journey as a writer and also about your books?
I've always loved to read and I've always loved to write. And my sister and I used to go to the library in elementary school. We could walk and we'd get a stack of library books once a week. And my aunt would check us out. And then we'd come back the next week and get another stack. And I always dreamed about being a writer, but I was very intimidated by it. But I've always been a really avid reader. And I kind of lost track of that. Like, especially during law school, I felt guilty reading for fun when I should be reading, these tomes on the law. So I basically didn't do either. And it was funny when I was stationed in Bosnia, I was the only female officer on this camp. It was called Camp Bedrock, and it was over a quarry. So it was named Bedrock after the Flintstones, do and all that. So it was there that I had all this downtime. I was living in a tent, and they had a tent that was right next door, and it was like the library tent, and these kind librarians from around the country would mail books, and then they would the ultimate free library. So I remember getting so bored and thinking, I used to like to read, why don't I try this? And then all of a sudden it just exploded all over again. And it was amazing to kind of fall reading.
That's something that you don't lose. It's like, and I'm so with you on that. I can remember the days going to the library, and we would have like that like summer reading program, and it was always so exciting to like check off your list, or fill in the little titles and everything. I remember all of that that too. So can you tell us a little bit about why you got into this particular era?
Well, it's funny because I was doing a lot of different writing, and I just felt like I was doing some contemporary fiction, and I just felt like it wasn't quite my niche. And it's a crazy story, but truth is stranger than fiction.
Yes, please tell us.
I was at a funeral for a little girl who I knew. She actually was a flower girl at my wedding, and I was at her wake, and I ended up meeting her uncle, and he told me the story about Susanna Bowling. And he said, somebody needs to write this story. I heard you're a lawyer. You should really give it, take a stab at it. And then I thought, I'm from the Boston area. I was like, there's more to the American Revolution than, Lexington and Concord and Yorktown. And so I started researching it more so because I thought I wasn't going to find any information and I'd be able to say, there's no basis for this whatsoever. Yeah. And then I actually found things. I found this one book that said, "Remember Susanna Bowling of Virginia?" That's all right. Hardly anyone does today.
Wow.
And then it was so neat because it was almost like discovering like hidden figures, you hear about Molly Pitcher, you hear about Sybil Ludington, Deborah Sampson. And I kind of felt like, all the stories have been told. So it was really neat to kind of tap into this story and explore and for me to learn so much about the area. I live in Richmond. So where Susanna lived it's about 40 minutes away in the Petersburg area. So it was really neat to go learn about that area. And it just broadened my horizons of going out and meeting all these reenactors and interpreters and really, visiting all these different museums and different homes that were even in the process of being renovated. So it was just really fun to learn about an area where I live. And
that's
a lot
amazing.
of people discount that area because it's got crime and it's low income. And it's just so neat to discover a whole different light and all the history that's there and all the wonderful people that are bringing it back.
Oh, that's neat. And that's what's so much fun about being a historical fiction author. Because whenever you find these little interesting tidbits that nobody knew about, and then you can write
Yes.
about it, it's just amazing. So tell us a little bit about Susanna and this story.
So she was 16 years old, and her brothers were off fighting for the Continentals, and this was late May 1781. So there had just been a big battle with General Cornwallis down in North Carolina. It was called the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, and she would have been waiting for word on whether her brothers had survived the battle or they were wounded. And out of the blue, General Cornwallis comes and shows up with his entire British Southern Army and quarters at her family's home. So he was down in North Carolina and totally frustrated with it. And he hated the heat, the humidity, and that the women were the women down there he was told they'd be all loyalists, but most of them were patriots, and they were cutting his supply lines. So he just thought, he got word that Lafayette was up in Virginia and got a location for him. And he disobeyed General Clinton, who was up in New York, and just decided to just go for it. And basically, he'd be the one in the history books if he captured Lafayette, and that would basically put an end to the war. So she receives them, and as she's serving dinner to Cornwallis, they start talking because they assume that she and her mother are silly, stupid women.
Yeah.
She overhears his plan, and she ends up sneaking out of the house in the middle of the night through a secret underground tunnel that was originally built to protect from Native American attacks. And she canoed across the Appomattox River alone in the pitch dark, grabbed a neighbor's horse, and rode 10 miles in the pitch dark alone. And then as I started researching, I thought, oh my gosh, she would have had to have come back before the sun came up, because that was the only road that connected Petersburg with Richmond. So she would have had to come back. Otherwise, she would have run into them on the road. Plus, they would have noticed that she was gone too.
Yeah.
So that was really just blew my mind.
That does blow your mind. It really does, to be so young and to be so passionate about the cause, that to be able to back it like that at that age.
It is. I know. It's then you think, would I have had the courage to do that at 16?
Yeah, exactly. So in all of that, so in the book, so is it a series? Like, does it continue with her story?
It's actually, I've got it kind of loosely joined as Courageous American Women.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so my second book is about Dolly Madison, the War of 1812. And now I'm working on a third book about Elizabeth Van Lew, who was a Union spy in Richmond during the Civil War. So then I'll have a trilogy. And then my son jokes, oh, and then you can write about the Korean War. I'm like, no. It'll be fun to have a trilogy. And then I may, kind of redo the titles and, have it all, have a link with the logo for all three to tie them together.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And then maybe put it in as a set. That would be really good. Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. So in doing all the research for all of this and your own history, your own background as far as serving in the military, how did that play into how you wrote about the stories?
Oh, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. I guess, I'm a very patriotic person. Our country isn't perfect, but I love it, and I'm very grateful for it. Well, it made me realize just how easy I even had it when I was in the military, with all the modern conveniences and all that. And just, the conditions were just horrible on both sides during, the British and the Americans. Some of them at the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, they were fighting. The men had no clothes. All they had was a flint box covering their genitals.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's just
no idea.
I know, it's just so hard to fathom their sleeping conditions and their, the lice and the starvation and the, smallpox and dysentery and typhoid. It's just mind-boggling how difficult it was for them, and that they persevered. It's incredible.
So you said that in comparison to how the modern conveniences that you had,
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, but I'm sure that you probably experienced some of the same. It had to have been hard, difficult, just not like what they had, but I'm sure you
Right.
had to experience some of that difficulty as well.
Right. And I was a lawyer. I was in the Army JAG Corps. So I
Uh-huh.
did like court martials and that kind of thing. I gave
Okay.
legal advice to soldiers. So, but I did go to Bosnia for 6 months. I deployed with an infantry unit. So that was a trip. That was,
Yeah.
I got to see the real army then. That's for
Oh,
sure.
I'm sure you
Yeah.
did. I'm sure you
Yeah.
did. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how you feel like historical fiction readers can relate to these books in today's modern um, society, because it seems like that certain eras get really, really popular,
Yes,
like World War II. I just talked about
exactly.
that with my last interview person, and how this Civil War era seems to be really um, attractive to readers. So why do you think that is?
Well, I think also part of it is just with our 250th anniversary coming up. I think
Hmm.
there's a lot more interest in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
Plus also with Hamilton, I think that really brought it. I remember first hearing this guy's writing like a hip hop about Alexander Hamilton, like
Yes,
thinking, oh my gosh. But I think it really brought it to life for people.
it
And
really did.
yes,
It
and
really
that's
did.
what I love about history. And really, this discovering this story about Susanna is really what turned me into a historian.
Hmm.
And it realizing that history is just it's these amazing stories about people, and they've all got quirks, and
Yeah.
they make mistakes, and it's not just dates and places and all that. So that's why I love writing at this age. So it's kind of an upper middle grade. It's kind of fifth
Okay.
grade through seventh grade. But
Okay.
I've talked to high school groups, and basically, and half my readers are adults too.
Hmm.
I talk a lot to historical societies and retirement homes, DARs, SARs. So it's neat the way the book just I call it the Bob Ross happy accident of I just wrote the book, and I was very fortunate that it's been able to kind of translate and move into
Yeah.
different venues and museums as well.
Oh, good.
Right. Well, it's just as I tell people, with contemporary fiction, it's unless if you are going to self-publish, you might have a book signing here or there, but then it kind of just goes on Amazon, and
Yeah.
it's hard to separate yourself from the crowd. But
Yeah.
so I feel very fortunate. This is just the book I happen to write. And then I remember approaching some of these, Mount Vernon, like, would you like to carry my book? And then they said yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just,
Oh, exciting.
yeah, so it's kind of neat because it's really stretched me in so many ways of things that I never
Of
thought.
course.
It's kind
Of
of like
course.
having a baby, you get into
Yes.
it and you don't realize, okay, I'm gonna have to teach him how to drive. I'm gonna, you're
Yes.
thinking about the immediate, having a baby. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think with a lot of authors, the challenge of knowing how to go about that
Oh
and
yeah.
transferring from the artistic side of being an author into the business side,
Yes.
and going into and realizing, hey, I need to get this baby out into the world.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. And it's a totally different skill set,
it is.
of the marketing and getting yourself out there. And
Yes.
yeah, I wasn't really prepared for it either. It's just, you write the book and you think, phew. And then it's like, well, that was the easy part.
Yes, it is. It really is. But I appreciate you sharing that, because it's very vital to for authors to realize that the passion that you have in writing, you have to have just as much, because only you can tell your story,
Mm.
and only you can get it out there the way it needs to be gotten out there, and market it in the way it needs to be marketed. So you were kind of telling me before the interview a little bit that you're fixing to have like a presentation,
Yeah, I
right?
do a lot of presentations. Let's see. On Saturday, I did a writing workshop in my
Okay.
county.
Oh,
So
great.
that was a lot of fun. And then yes, Sunday I was at historic Hanover Historic Courthouse, where Patrick Henry gave his first. I had his famous case called the Parsons Cause. So I spoke to the Hanover Historical Society. And then
Okay.
today I'm going to a retirement home and talking about Dolly Madison. So it's fun. It's great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm kind of an introverted extrovert, so it's nice. I love when I have the days where I'm home in my dirty yoga pants and I'm just writing and doing laundry, and then I'm kind of bursting to get out of the house to, go, talk nonstop about Dolly Madison or Susanna or so I have different topics. So it's fun. It's worked out great.
Well,
Of
that's
just
really exciting because do you have anything coming up that we can tell our listeners about in case if you have something they can come by and see you, maybe get a signed copy?
Oh, sure. I'm trying to think. Gosh, I'm trying to think because actually I've just been going gangbusters. I will be at the Florida Homeschool Convention over Memorial Day weekend. It's actually the largest homeschool convention
Oh,
in
wow.
the country. And
Okay.
that's Memorial Day weekend. And I'm doing a book signing at Eppington, which is in Chesterfield County, Virginia. And that
Okay.
is on May 4th. And I'm trying to
Where's
think
that
of
at? Where's
that's
that going to be at?
it's outside of Richmond. It's called Eppington Plantation, which has
Okay.
ties to Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
Some of his daughters actually who passed away, they were buried there.
Okay.
So Eppington, I'm trying to think because there's different types of year too where things kind of like cycle,
Uh-huh.
cycle through. But I think and I've got it all, got all my dates too on my website.
Great. And can you tell our listeners what your website is?
It is just my name, Libby, Libby, McNamee, McNamee.com.
Okay. We'll be sure and have that posted on the screen so that
Okay.
anybody wanting to know more information about where to come find you and meet you and get a signed copy, we'll be sure to post that so they can come.
And I will be down in Edenton, North Carolina.
Okay.
I think it's September 23rd. And that's where one of the tea parties that happened along the way was down in historic Edenton. So I'm looking forward to going there. I've heard
of course.
things about Edenton and I've never been there before. So
well, that's really exciting to be able to go to the places that you write about is a lot of fun.
It is. It's really neat to meet other people who are really interested in history. And sometimes, even if it's a small crowd, I meet the neatest people and it's fun. I enjoy it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun. Well, thank you so much, Libby, for being on the show today. We wish you much success with your books. And one of the things I have to say, I'm so glad to know that about the age, that you're writing for. I've had so many young people, like when we went to the book fair in Nashville last year, I had a lot of young people coming in asking for books for their, age bracket. And I was, so now I know. And so I'll be able to share that with those that ask. And I really do think that that's a way of getting new historical fiction, young ones who love historical fiction into the genre. So thank you so much for that. We'll be sure to make a note of that on our website.
Oh, thank you very much, Dee. This has been an honor and a pleasure. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I hope you enjoy your presentation today. I hope it goes very successfusly. And to all the listeners out there who have listened today, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have Libby's post up next week, next Tuesday, and I'll be sure and send you the link as well so that you can share it. Thank you for joining us today. This is Dee Marley with the History Bards podcast. Keep making history and keep listening.